Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and instead of making an actual double Subtlety Rogue video with a lot of good edits, because I'm somebody who just doesn't have any time and can't be bothered, instead let's do a guide. Not even like a good guide video, just an asshole in front of a green screen and just sitting there talking about the guide. That is the best way, the best way of doing a guide video. It's actually what a few people have been doing. So that makes me think, like, is that all you need to do now? You don't have to put effort? Shit, I'll try. So double Subtlety Rogue is a fun specialization. The reason it's fun for me in particular is because the 2v2 ladder is just infested with the cancer that is healer DPS. It's been like this since what, Pandaria, and it's just gotten worse because healers have enough cooldowns in order to just outlive no matter what kind of play you make. But with Legion, with the improvement that we had, there's so many things you can do to counter a rogue, mainly your trinket, or the lack thereof, whether you're rolling with Relentless or Adaptation. Rogues are the kind of class, especially the subtlety variety, even after the nerfs, they can still take advantage of the fact that enemies has a trinket. And the fact that you have a vanish might not be a 30-second vanish, 45-second vanish still is enough for you to make a few plays, especially if you execute them properly. Basically what they made it is, double sub isn't as brain dead as it was, but it's still viable as long as you and your buddy know what you're doing and you guys have a little bit of practice. So it became one of those comps that actually has an inkling of what I would call a term that was lost in World of Warcraft. Skill, I think is up pronounced it right. We haven't seen that in a while since like back in Wrath BC. I never played that. That's prehistoric times. So double subtlety, the idea is simple. You CC one target and then you stun lock the other guy. You basically have two rogues and you have two different jobs. You have to have a full stun lock and rotation, so stun them into a stun so they literally can't play. And the other rogue is just there simply just sinking as much damage into them as possible, while CCing the secondary target, whether it be through sap into another sap or sap into a full blind, maybe force a trinket. As soon as you get an opener, you're basically trying to force things out of enemies, whether it be trinkets and cooldowns. If you can stay in and burn the defenses so you can keep offensive pressure on the target and then force literally every defensive cooldown and trinket, then that's what you're working for. But if you can at least just force a trinket, then it'll be better. Every situation with double sub is going to be different. It depends on what racials and trinkets enemies have. Someone like who is an orc with Relentless isn't going to set your stuns just as long. And if they are orc Relentless with a monk racial, then they can break out of your stuns all the time. So you have to be paying attention to who you're going against. You will be changing your situation on who you go and who you swap on and who you will be your kill target, depending on the trinkets and depending on cooldowns. But in most cases, this is something for you to remember. Generally, if the target doesn't have a trinket, or if they are relentless without the orc racial or human racial, then they are pretty much a dead set target. You can train them to the ground. While your stuns won't be as long, you can still combo them back to back. Another thing is, if you're going for, let's say, saps, but if your target, for example, is it's a human with Relentless, or if it's a warrior with a human trinket, or an orc with a warrior who can break out of saps with Relentless, and this whole stun reduction, you're going to have a much harder time, so you'll really have to pick your battles. But the general idea is, this is what the first rogue does on the first enemy. You go with Mark for Death into a full kidney, you Shadow Strike into a Nightblade, Shadow Dance, Shadow Strike, Eviscerate, Cheap Shot, Gorma's Bite, Cheap Shot, Eviscerate. Yes, you're gonna overdraw some combo points, but you're trying to get as much damage and force things out. If enemies decide not to use their trinket and you went through that whole rotation, you basically got them killed. You can sometimes combo in a Shadow Blades, and when you use Shadow Blades, you don't have to worry too much about your combo point and maximizing it. I guess if, let's say, you get a Shadow Strike and you get the lucky proc with all your combo points and you can go for a straight Eviscerate right after that, you can, but for the most part, your rotation shouldn't change too much. You basically try to find a rotation where you're trying to stun enemies out and stun lock them, not letting them play. If it's somebody with a Relentless trinket, and if they are an orc, you will want to start using your cheap shots a lot earlier. In most cases, you'll either go for, let's say, Mark for Death Kidney, Shadow Dance, or Mark for Death Kidney, Shadow Strike, Nightblade, Shadow Dance, Shadow Strike. Instead of a second Shadow Strike, you'll simply just go with a cheap shot, Eviscerate, and then cheap shot, because they won't be sitting on stuns for as long. And it will be better to chain a stun right into another stun, because if you give the enemy a gap, they will use a trinket or a cooldown, and then it'll basically fuck up your whole opener. You want to force pressure out of enemies. While the second rogue, literally, you just Shadow Strike, Nightblade, Shadow Dance, Shadow Strike, Eviscerate, Shadow Strike, Eviscerate. Again, your situation and your rotation will change slightly depending on who you will go against. And to cover every single situation would be absolutely impossible, but I can give you some tips of what me and Saf have seen in some of the comms that we have seen. If you're going to get somebody, let's say, a healer with a trinket and then the DPS with Relentless, in most cases, depending on the DPS, if it's a warrior, you're not really going to get a lot out of it value. You maybe can open with a blind on the warrior, open on the healer. The warrior can't trick the blind, and that is the only CC that they can't get out of. Let's say a warrior getting out of saps, or a warrior not sitting stuns for long at all. So maybe a blind in the opener and full burst on a heal will force the trinket out of the healer, and then you reset. Let's say you're going against, let's say, a Ellie Shaman and a Resto Druid, and Resto Druid has Relentless. You basically can just take one rogue to stun lock the Ellie Shaman. The other rogue will use his Shadow Dances to get a 1 sap on a Druid, 2nd sap on a Druid, 3rd sap on a Druid into a blind. Then you can combo off another blind if you want, or if the other rogue cannot use the blind, you can combo off a full kidney if you want off of that. And the longer you can make those stuns and make those blinds work, then maybe you can change back to sap. But you're basically putting a healer in a full stun lock or a CC lock in any way. So you gotta pay attention to trinkets and who you're going against. Some classes certain CC are great at, like warriors. If they're on orc and they have a Relentless, stunning them isn't gonna last long. It's gonna be like really short stuns, so you can't just think, okay, I'm gonna put him in the 5-second stun. That's actually gonna be a 3-second stun, so you gotta find different approaches. The general idea is you force things in a stun lock while controlling both targets, and yes, you want to control both of them if ever possible, or have the other rogue smoke bomb so the enemy needs to maybe close in and use an ability just to get the peels off. Then you vanish after you force things, then you reset, and then you open it again. The idea is you open up, you force everything, trinkets, cooldowns, make it situation dangerous, blow your defensives as the enemies are trying to counter you with offensive pressure, and then you vanish. Once you force as many things out, you decide who is your next target. If let's say the healer trinketed and the DPS trinketed, but the DPS is a Death Knight and he burned IBF. And let's say the healer is a Holy Priest and you would rather not have to deal with Guardian Angel whenever you go for a stun lock. So it'd be easier to just stun and kill the DK who doesn't have IBF anymore and just sap through the whole CC of the Priest. So your situation is going to change depending on who you go against. And that the only way to figure out who to go on is practice. Just try different ideas, try different targets. And there's no cookie cutter way of going about it. It just simply depends what trinkets, what ratios, what class they are, what talents are they running. In some cases, for example, when you go in and using double rogue against a DPS and a Mystery Monk, if they don't go the red crane stance where they can break immune stuns for every 30 seconds or 40 seconds or so, then if they don't go that as a rogue, it's a one-shot. It's really easy, even with the trinket, even with the cocoon. In most cases, you can go and throw in a belf in there to kind of blanket sounds for a little bit, so then you can chain yourself more stuns so then you don't let him use any abilities. Plus, both of you are rogue, so you can shadow step, shadow strike to the target, and really just execute a lot of damage, pressure, and stay on them the whole time. You're really sticky to them. But if they're rolling something like a red crane stance that makes them immune to stuns every 30 to 40 seconds, that means you're gonna have to change your rotation. You're gonna have to change your playstyle. You might have to not go the monk, and you might have to see the monk go the other guy. But who is the other guy? Is he a warrior? Is he a death knight? What kind of trinket is he rolling? What kind of abilities is he using? Whatever, it kind of just depends on you. Another one that I can tell you as a double DPS is you're gonna have a trouble with demon hunters. Depending on what healer they're running with, they could give you some trouble. The best strategy that me and Sap have, you can either one, bomb rush them before they get the eyes, sprint, and then shadow step to them and sap them. Hopefully you'll be able to get the sap as they get eyes, so that you can at least hold them in place so they don't get you out of stealth and they don't know your position, and you can get a full opener with all the control you need. Or you wait for them to close in. One of the rogues pops smoke bomb, so then the demon hunter can't hit into the smoke bomb, but you can sap out of it. So that is something you can use to your advantage, but that's about as far as I can give you in terms of the general guide. The idea behind this comp is just play as scummy as you can. If you want to just force everything out of the enemy, vanish, completely reset until they have nothing, that's the only way to play around. And while not everybody enjoys this kind of comp and they might think, oh, you just literally scum, you just have to wait, you can't really blame the player, you can't really blame the class, you more can blame the game and the fact that we just don't have any other cooldowns. On contrary, actually would be fine if rogues have more survivability, and if we could stay and fight and keep in combat, the whole time instead of having to vanish and run away. And the enemy, all they can do is try to maybe AoE us out or pick up eyes, or maybe they're watching the stream and then maybe they can go in the area where we are chilling and AoE us out that way. That has happened once at least. But this is the best thing that I have for you in terms of the guide for double subtlety. This is more of a simple guide, and it's more like the general guidance of what you should be doing. But again, if you want to get into the details of it, you're looking at different situations of classes you're going against, trinkets that they're using, ratios that they're using, and there's not a lot I can really do in terms of covering everything. But of course, I gave you guys, I feel like, as many tips as I possibly could. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys enjoy double subtlety. I have a lot of fun playing this. Not only is it with friends, but in a meta that's all about healer DPS, it's first of all refreshing to see double DPS, but also we can see a reason why double DPS just does not work in 2v2. And I think it would be better if healer DPS was actually the weaker option than double DPS, because we would see a lot more players and a lot more competition when it comes to a 2v2 arena, and a lot more class variety, maybe even spec variety, if double DPS was better in 2v2 than healer DPS. But until then, keep playing Rogue, keep being bitchy, keep being really just scummy, and keep winning, because that's the only thing you can do when the meta is all healer DPS. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you did. Like the video down below. Subscribe to the channel, follow them, click the notification button, because yeah, I need all the YouTube views, if you know what I mean. And I'll see you guys all in another video.